Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review Your Honor Season 2, Episode 7. Now this episode, for starters, as soon as I started the episode, I was a little hesitant because it started off with like a 2.5 minute teaser trailer, or not like teaser, but a recap. And so, usually in TV shows nowadays, if it starts off with a recap that's really, really long, that's an indicator that a lot of stuff will happen. And in this case, that was definitely the case. And also, as soon as the episode opens up, right off the bat, it was already like, not that it's a flaw, but as soon as the episode starts off, like, Eugene is already on the doorstep magically of Lee. And Lee is all of a sudden back in the show. She's gotten really, really good in the past couple of years. And so the episode started off with like this huge surprise. It was like 3 surprises at once. Number 1, Eugene is alive. Number 2, he magically knows where Lee's house is. Number 3, one of the Magnum Force cops let Eugene get away. And so that was like, it was so shocking that I was like, what? And I was like, wait a second. I was really, really taken back. And then I got home and I watched it, and wow. 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 That's all I have to say. Like, this is one of those episodes where even though I might criticize it, I don't really even care. Like, this episode is exactly what we've been waiting for as fans of the show. This episode is why it was good to have a season 2. Because if you didn't have a season 2, you wouldn't have led up to this episode and have this episode. That's why I always laugh when people will say, like, this show should have ended last year. Or, like, oh, why is the show still going on? And it's like, they will never get to be thankful for, like, these specific episodes where, this is what happens. You have a lot of episodes. You have a lot of stories that come together magically into one episode, and you have payoffs. And this episode was nothing but payoffs and a little bit of setup for even better things. And wow. Like, I don't think I've ever been this excited about an episode of Your Honor, except for maybe episode 1 of this season. Like, this episode was basically probably one of the best TV shows episodes that I've seen in years. I mean, in years. This episode was a masterpiece on so many different levels. I'm not saying that sarcastically at all. Like, this episode was exactly what I wanted. I thought it was perfect. I thought that every single thing in the entire episode was just A+++. I don't have a single, like, negative thing to say. Like, even though I'm going to critique it a little bit, and I'm going to, like, poke fun at it a little bit, none of it is, like, negative at all. Like, this episode is flawless, really. And I know that that's shocking. After an episode full of twists, you go and you watch a review, and you get the biggest twist of all time. I mean, let's be honest, this episode is better than any episode in Season 1. This episode is better than any episode in Season 2. I mean, why? Because it just feels that way. Like, there are certain episodes of television and they're so good that you just feel that they're good. Like the whole time you're watching it, you're like, yes, this is an incredible episode of television. I know it right now. It's a certain kind of balance between light and dark, where it's a little dark, but you know there's a little bit of lightness in there at the same time. And it's this magical feeling where you're watching it and you know this is a great episode of television. And it doesn't happen very often. It's like a unicorn. It only comes around once in a while. And I don't even know how it could get better than this, honestly. Like, I was really taken back because the first 6 episodes of the season, they wavered. You know, they were solid. A lot of them, though, they had this formula where they started off really, really slow and boring. And then halfway through, they got really good. And by then, it was too late, though. This episode, it started off great and got even greater for an hour. And then at the end, so let's get into the episode. We already got into Lee. I mean, I'm so glad that she didn't betray your honor so that she could be in the MCU, like, and betray them like that. Like, I'm so glad that she was on the show, because I would also say she gave the best performance in the episode. Like, I thought I really noticed, like, her return, like, in terms of, I noticed that her acting was sorely missing from the show. And so the whole episode, I was like, you know, even though I made fun of her the first season, like, I guess I was really missing her acting. So I was really glad to see her. It was kind of strange, though. I mean, there was a big thing that I didn't like that happened before the episode. I guess it happened in between episodes, technically, because this is one of those instances where they have something climactic happen, and then the next thing you know, it's already been resolved, apparently, and we jump cut to somewhere else years later, or hours later. They did this in Chucky Season 1, Episodes 3 and 4, where you think that Chucky is going to kill the mean girl, Lexi, and then in Episode 4, everyone's already in the hospital, and they don't explain how Chucky or her got out of there at all. And they did the same thing here, where I guess apparently this is how it happened. Eugene stood in line at the bus. Detective Rudy, he came up to him, shot him, and then ran away like a little bitch. Which, that was not what it felt like in the last episode. Last episode, it felt like he stood there and executed him, and I almost felt like I was waiting for the other shot to happen, because he didn't really even seem like he was concealing himself or anything. And, you know, people would be able to ID him. They'd have probably security camera footage. I mean, that was a strange plan. But he just runs away, I guess. And then Eugene, once again, he sneaks and slithers away, and he magically teleports himself to Lee's front door. And, of course, Lee is going to help him, and she's going to do everything he wants. And yeah, so I was a little hesitant at first. And so then we had this fantastic scene where, and another thing about this episode is that it just keeps pounding you. Like, you just get pounded for an hour long, like just one thing after another, just constantly. Like, just when you think a big scene has happened, another big scene comes, and it just happens over and over and over again, to the point of where by the end you're satisfied for a week, as you should be with a television episode. You know, that's another thing nowadays, is that a lot of TV shows, they make episodes knowing that you're not going to be satisfied until like a week later. And I feel like this show, even though they had a slow burn for a while, they at least kept you satisfied each time. I mean, I was satisfied with having the discussions and, diving into each episode, I guess. And then this episode was the ultimate payoff. And there's this fantastic scene where we are introduced to the real Beckwith, and he arrests Michael because he's biased against him, and Michael was driving without a license. And we will talk about this scene later on because it's then paralleled. So yeah, and then we see Rudy, and he's driving in the car, and he's talking to Charlie, the mayor, and apparently, he didn't even know what happened at all to Eugene. Like, he just left, and he didn't find out what happened, and so he's going to have to try to get out of town. And finally, by the way, Eugene shows some empathy towards Adam. I mean, it is a little too late, but still, at least he showed something. And he said, "I didn't mean to shoot him, Lee. I didn't mean to do it." It's pretty hilarious because he feels almost like a completely different character. I mean, the way that he's been acting the whole season, it was like another different character. So I was glad about that. So yeah, a lot of boxes in this episode were checked. A lot of boxes in terms of questions that you get satisfied and stuff like that. And so then Lee invites a doctor over, and she kind of helps out. And then eventually they take him to a hospital out of state. They persuade the person there to not report him specifically and make it sound like it's a Hispanic 40-year-old man. And once again, Lee was really the highlight of this episode. I mean, without Lee, I don't think this episode would have been as good, honestly. But then it's really funny and kind of, I don't know, cartoonish, because they have this security guard in the hospital, and I'll just call him Officer Donuts, because he really comes to the rescue. And it's like, it is pretty hilarious, like, just how many conveniences there are to bend the world to Eugene's advantage. I mean, Eugene, he up to this point, like, even though this episode is an A+, like, all those episodes this season where he's gotten away with everything and he's just evaded and escaped, it's so unrealistic, and it's so cartoony, and with this part, I was actually kind of happy at first, because Officer Donuts is like, I'm not gonna be a part of Eugene's world, and so the officer puts Eugene in handcuffs, and so I thought that was kind of hilarious. I mean, it seemed like everyone and everything, like, they were almost showing you the intricate machinery of the Eugene universe, the Eugene cinematic universe, where just like everything and everyone bends to his demands and whatever he wants. Like, it was almost like they're showing you, like, oh, this is how it happens. You have Lee, she talks to that person talks to that person, and everyone just magically, gives Eugene a pass because he's a kid, and everything, and it's just funny, and so yeah, this Officer Donuts, he's not gonna let him get away. And then they had a really intense moment too, where Rudy comes all the way to this hospital, which I will say that I guess the timing was realistic, but I felt like the timing in terms of like how long it took people to get places was a little, it was, I don't know, it needed a little bit more explaining, because the Officer Donuts got there pretty quickly when he got this report about who was really there. And it was a pretty, like, intense moment where Rudy comes into the hospital, and I guess he was just going to pick Eugene up and fucking take him out of there. And it was funny because this part reminded me a lot of the X-Files season 6 or season 7. I can't remember which one, but they had this stupid story about this kid who had telepathic powers. I can't even remember his name anymore because that show was just so badly written. But there's this Scully and Mulder, or it might have just been Scully. I can't even remember because, Mulder just kept on leaving over and over again like a little bitch. Scully promised this kid that she would protect him, and it was in a hospital room just like this, where the kid was in a hospital bed and. Are all these people around, and she was like, "I'm gonna protect you, little boy." And then, literally, like, minutes later, she gets distracted, and then he is taken away and just carried out of there in a hospital full of people. And it felt like the same thing was almost gonna happen here, and that the writers who wrote this show are better than the writers who wrote X-Files. So instead, Eugene, it is a pretty meme-worthy moment where he jumps up out of his sleeping position, and he's like, "My name is Eugene Jones! My name is Eugene Jones!" And all I could think about was, yeah, we know. We've seen the drawings. We've seen them. But everyone in the whole hospital was looking at him. They were all probably going to try to help him if that guy tried to get to him. And then at the same time, Lee runs over and jumps on top of him like she's going to catch a bullet for him. And like that was like a really good scene too, because that's what should have happened in the X-Files. That really, they should have put that scene in the X-Files. So, and next up, we have the Magnum Force cop Beckwith. He had a personal vendetta against Michael for setting criminals free. And he used a term that I don't think people under the age of like 70 use. Or maybe 60 or 70, and that's bleeding heart. Like bleeding heart liberal. Beckwith calls Michael a bleeding heart judge, and he says, he set all these criminals free and blah, blah, blah. So I guess that was his motive for killing Michael's wife, but we don't even really get any specific criminal that he let go free, so that might be another storyline, possibly. Like you could have a whole story where you find out that there's this really bad criminal that Michael set free. And the thing that I liked about it, though, was that, in other shows, this would have been used as a topic to demean Michael. Like in other sequels, especially like The Last of Us 2. Well, this would be a spoiler for that video game. But basically, the whole first part of the video game is all the characters demeaning the main character for saving his daughter's life and killing these evil pieces of shit who were trying to kill her. And because he saved her life, he was a terrible person, apparently. And even though he wasn't. And it felt like in this, they treated it like, he wasn't a terrible person. And, they weren't using it as a point to demean him and to tarnish his legacy as a character. And another layer that I liked that it added was that in the first season, it almost seemed like they were trying to make him like an SJW judge, where he was, you know, I don't know, like he was helping out everyone, and he was really down with these people who would have gotten, like a million years otherwise, and but they weren't. It was just that's his character, that he's a nice judge, even though I don't really even know about that, like especially in the second half where he tampered with everything and contrived the court case. And then, of course, Nancy Ex Machina happened, and we knew that this was going to happen as soon as Michael was texting Nancy, and then he stopped texting her, and she saw it. We knew that, hopefully she'll come to his rescue. So Beckwith tries to kill Michael, and it is a very, very good scene. I think they even had a thunderstorm going on in the background to tell you how good of a scene it was. And she comes in at the end and saves him. And then we find out there's another police partner. I was really kind of, before this actually, I should say, I was really kind of disappointed because the ending of the last episode was so good. With all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get this Magnum Force cop who shoots Eugene, and I would have been really disappointed if Rudy wasn't a Magnum Force cop. So I really like the fact that no, he was also involved in this conspiracy. But the real surprise is that Rudy and that other guy, they would talk to the mayor, and they did business with the mayor, and that was like the whole thing. That was the real story, was that the mayor was their boss. And so there is a fantastic scene as well where, it is kind of a sad sequence where Nancy goes to Rudy's house, and, in the first season, Rudy was just a typical, police stereotype, policeman stereotype. But in this episode, it was kind of a good scene where, you really felt like Rudy was in between a rock and a hard place. He could either go to prison or he could try to run away before Charlie and everyone else could kill him. And so he just kills himself like Nacho in fucking Better Call Kim season 6. But see, in this instance, it actually worked. And so that was another thing, was that this episode, it had two things that happened in Better Call Saul, and both of them worked in this instance. So it should tell you that, it wasn't the actions themselves in Better Call Kim that I was complaining about. It was the terrible writing that was associated with those episodes, and the fact that those things just shouldn't have happened in those instances. And Rudy, he does make you kind of feel sorry for him, honestly. Like, it was weird. Like, that's the only time I've ever liked his character a little bit. So, once again, that's how you can tell this is a great episode, is because you like characters that you never liked before. That's a telltale sign of a fantastic TV episode. Now, there is a weak part of the episode, and I hesitate to call it weak because I said it's an A++ episode. But it's just the weakest part of the whole thing. It's not the fact that it's bad. Thea, she leaves the christening clothes at the hotel room, and she goes to visit with that young priest. And I was ready to throw up in my mouth. I was like, ugh, because I was like, what's gonna happen here? Oh God. What storyline are they going to start here? But instead it was just, he consulted her a little bit more, and we'll see what happens with that later. We also saw this really good sequence with with Little Mo, and Little Mo finally returns briefly, and he admits that he was responsible for these bad things, and I can't wait to see more of Little Mo in the next couple episodes. And then Big Mo also shows up. They're showing up to mourn the loss of that teenage kid who randomly grabbed a balloon and then took the drugs and then died. And Big Mo was another weak part of this episode because her story in general has been kind of weak, where all she cares about is this club. And I thought about, who is she, the Penguin? That's like the Penguin character trope, where the Penguin, all he cares about is the Iceberg Lounge. And, he's just there all day and night long. And, I feel like that's what they've turned Big Mo's character into. And I did like her in the first half of the season, but in this episode, she kind of just shows up and leaves. So we'll see more with her, though. I mean, they had a couple other things where they teased her. Again, this episode was perfect. Just because I'm, critiquing, that doesn't mean that I'm saying it's bad. So then we had, and I said at least the last deed that Rudy ever did was kill Eugene, shoot Eugene. That's pretty funny. That's just a joke. And then Carlo gets a promotion, which is a hilarious moment. This episode is pretty much 100% serious, but there are a couple of moments of comedy, and one of those is Jimmy's just all of a sudden Carlo, you're a part of you're growing up now, like me, and you can do stuff now and help me with the business, quote unquote, the quote unquote business. And Jimmy, I guess Jimmy has become a man. He's really grown up. That beat down of Frankie. Frankie is now let go. We will no longer see him anymore, I guess. And of course, Gina is not very happy about that. And it was pretty interesting and kind of comedic the way Jimmy was acting this episode. I liked it though, because this is the way that he should have been acting the whole series thus far. And it's he's finally become this character. So I think that's great. I think that, all the stuff with him where he's just, he's eating spaghetti or lasagna and he's this is really good. He's just shoveling it in his mouth like he thinks that makes him cool. It was pretty funny, all the stuff with Jimmy. And I can't wait to see more of the new Jimmy. And he also renegotiated the deal where he says that they can use his docs if they can do this. He renegotiates that deal to what he wanted instead of what his father wanted. Father-in-law, whatever. Carmine. Yeah, father-in-law. Yeah. And then, what I would say the best part of the episode was probably when Michael visits with Mayor Charlie, and he confronts Charlie, and he kind of questions him a little bit and about his wife's death, and we get to find out that his wife, he was the last person that she called. And I think that a lot of people figured that out, though. I think, Mayor Charlie, he was suspicious from the very beginning in terms of that. But he maintains his innocence, and he says that that he was just calling his police contact, and yeah, who knows. So I really love that scene. I mean, as I said before, those two actors have great chemistry, Bryan Cranston and then the mayor, Charlie. They have fantastic chemistry together, and you could really feel the tension in this scene, even though they don't try to kill each other or anything. It was a perfect scene. I mean, this episode was full of just so many perfect, intense scenes. Like, I was amazed by what they accomplished with this episode. Then we get, surprisingly, now you guys are going to laugh your heads off. Remember Better Call Kim, season 6, where Kim is on the bus and she just starts crying for no reason whatsoever? And it's basically like an obvious Emmy Award baiting attempt to make you go like, oh wow, that actress deserves an Emmy because she cried on a public bus. And it's like, oh, this same scene was done in this episode, and it is effective. And it because, you have Michael, he just almost got killed twice. He almost lost his best friend Nancy. He just found out like this whole conspiracy was involved with killing his wife. He just confronted his best friend Charlie, the mayor, former best friend Charlie, in this intense filled scene. And it's like, yeah, he would have cried. And so it worked. It was a perfect scene. I was like, Jesus. See, this is what happens when people know how to write good television episodes. Like, you see, Kim Wexler could have had the same scene in Better Call Kim, and it could have worked. But the problem was that it didn't make sense. It was stupid as shit. And it was one of the stupidest fucking things we've ever seen in television history, contrasting with this. And one of the other things about this scene that just made it so incredible was the fact that it was a parallel to the beginning of the episode when the Magnum Force cop number 2, he said that he was confronting Michael about speeding and with driving without a license. And Michael says, I usually take the bus now. And he says, you should have taken the bus. And it was just such a... It was a perfect parallel, that thing with him being on the bus near the end. It was just perfect. It was like... So I gotta say, bravo, Your Honor. Bravo, Bryan Cranston. Bravo, writers of Your Honor. Since people usually say bravo to the people who made Better Call Kim. No, let's say bravo to the people who made Your Honor for once. And to put icing on the cake, Thea and her baby have come to Michael's doorstep for help. Boom. That's how they end the episode. And once again, I think that this is one of the best TV episodes I've ever seen. It's a fantastic example of how to do layered storytelling and have a bunch of payoffs and have a really good, it's a solid episode. And even if you haven't even seen the whole series, you probably like this episode because it was so well written, it was so well put together. I was really at a loss because I was not expecting this to be so good. It was good to finally see all those episodes paying off, though, because I admit my patience was wearing thin a little bit because each episode had that slow formula, and I was worried that maybe they had settled into like a slow formula, but no. Another thing, though, I would say Eugene in particular, I can't wait to see what happens with him, because I want to see, like, if he just still is able to evade everyone and everything, and, you know, get away with everything. I wonder what's going to happen with him and Lee, and then I wonder what's going to happen with Little Mo also, because I think that he has a lot to do. I mean, he could have a lot to do in the next couple episodes. But the biggest question mark, much like last episode where Olivia disappeared, this episode Olivia was not in the episode. And I was like, ooh, where is she? You know that she is hiding in the wings, and that in the next few episodes she will come back into being a force against them, because I feel like her character, now that we've seen 7 out of 10 episodes, if she doesn't really do anything that integral to the story in the next few episodes, I feel like her character was a big waste of time, because she's never really been threatening. She had a great storyline set up at the beginning of the season where you really wanted to follow this story of her forcing Michael to do things for her and everything. But then Michael just wouldn't do shit for her. And now she's just kind of let him go and disappeared. Well, I guess she's watching while she also watches her rodeo in the car. So that is the one big question mark, is what is going on with Olivia. And by the way, too, like, what was going on with Lee the whole time that all this stuff happened? Like, you mean to tell me that Lee has just been, like, chilling on the couch, getting thicker and thicker? Like, that is basically what I have deduced what's happened. Like, she never went to visit Adam in the hospital, apparently, even though he died. Like, you'd think that she'd hear about that and, like, go to his funeral or something. Like, they haven't explained that, and so I hope they explain what she was doing this whole time, besides sitting on the couch and getting thicker and thicker, rewatching episodes of Your Honor Season 1. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, and you guys see another thing too, is that whenever I don't really criticize an episode a lot, the videos turn out a lot shorter, because there's only so much you can say except for just saying, wow, that was really good, wow, that was amazing. But this episode, it really was good and amazing, so I don't even care. So anyways, I can't wait for next episode. I can't wait to see what happens with the rest of the season, because this episode was definitely worth it for all the people who were saying, like, season 2 shouldn't have happened, like, all this crap, because, you know, they don't want things to overstay their welcomes. This episode alone tells you why season 2 was worth it, because all these episodes, you know, I knew that this was coming. I knew that, you know, all this stuff had to pay off somehow. And it was just this episode that it happened to pay off for the most part. So, please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of Your Honor Season 2, Episode 7. What do you think of Eugene Jones? My name is Eugene Jones! And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews of Your Honor. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.